Released by Spike Chunsoft in 2014 on the PlayStation Vita, Danganronpa Another Episode would be a spin-off story that takes place between the events of the first and second main games. Written by series creator Kazutaka Kodaka and directed by newcomer Shun Sasaki, the game would add additional character development and lore to the main series. For gameplay, this spin-off would instead be a third-person action game with 3D models and environments, full voice acting, light puzzle-solving elements, and horror themes, dramatically different from the visual novel styles of the main series. For characters, the player would mainly control Komaru Naegi, the sister to Makoto for the first game, while being able to switch to Toko, another surviving character from the first game, and her split personality Genocide Jack. Komaru is armed with a megaphone-like device called a hacking gun that can be fired with a variety of truth bullets, which only affect machinery and result in a variety of effects like breaking, moving, and even dancing and controlling the enemy robots briefly. The story only gets larger from here, so let's cut it down to size with a recapitation. As the game begins, 6 months after the ending of the first game, we are introduced to Komaru Naegi, the younger sister to Makoto from the first game, who has been imprisoned in a well-furnished apartment for a year and a half. She has never seen or even contacted the person who's imprisoned her, much less given a reason why, though one fateful day she hears someone rustling at her door. Hoping it to be a rescuer, she is shocked to instead see a strange two-toned bear shred through her door. As it moves to kill her, she slips past it and she's finally out of her cell, only to find her floor is on fire. As she hurries for the elevator, it opens before her to reveal Byakuya, another survivor from the first game, in charge of his own team. He saves her, explaining he is from the 14th Division of Future Foundation, and here to rescue her. His team was tipped off about there being a captive here, but the surprise presence of Monokumas tells him this was all a trap. He's about to explain more, but more Monokumas burst in, overrunning the team, and Byakuya hands her a megaphone-like tool called a hacking gun, able to destroy the robotic bears. He tells her to run for the restaurant across the street and meet another Future Foundation member there, and as he does so, she is shocked to see an army of Monokumas slaughtering everyone as they invade the city. An emergency is declared on the TV, revealing here to be Towa City, and she sees a group of 4 kids play with the dead news anchor before a 5th girl in a wheelchair comes in. The wheelchaired girl introduces them as the Warriors of Hope and Masters of Monokuma, with the mission to purge the city of worthless problem-causing adults and instead build a paradise for children by children. Komaru reflects that a year and a half ago there was a riot at the Hope Speak Academy that was fueled by something far deeper, and eventually overtook the world in war and despair. When things were finally starting to fall around her, some people broke into her house and kidnapped her from her family, imprisoning her in the apartment until just recently. She finds the Future Foundation agent mortally wounded, and he tells her to go ahead to the park just ahead where there's a helicopter and rescue waiting. As they wait to hear from Byakuya, they explain this city is an island off the coast and controlled by the powerful IT corporation Towa Group that, since the Great Tragedy, has taken control of things. Because of her strong influence, this city has actually suffered far less compared to others in the wake of the Great Tragedy. The cause of the sudden rioting and Monokuma invasion is unknown, but they are interrupted as they spot a young child wearing a strange Monokuma-themed helmet directing the mob to attack the group. The rescue team is torn apart as a Monokuma hijacks the chopper Komaru is on and crashes it elsewhere in the city. By some strong luck, Komaru survives the crash, but when soon surrounded by countless Monokumas, she passes out. When she comes to, she is met by a boy named Nagito, who only refers to himself as a servant and explains she's been asleep for 2 days. She is soon led to meet the Warriors of Hope, children talented with extremely high aptitudes in particular studies from the elementary school for prodigies affiliated with Hope Speak Academy. As they introduce themselves, they each claim an RPG-esque job role they assign themselves for this crusade. Masaru, the PE Ultimate, as the hero, Nagisa, the Social Studies Ultimate, as the sage, Jotaro, the Art Ultimate, as the priest, Kotoko, the Drama Ultimate, as the fighter, and Monaco, the Homeroom Ultimate, as the mage. They claim they are a party out to rid the world of demons, aka all adults, and create a paradise for just kids. They claim they were considering Komaru for something, but decided now they're going to just play a death game where she is the prey and they compete to see who can catch and kill her first. Nagito attaches a wristband to her, explaining all targets have this wristband on, and it's set to explode if she tampers with it in any way. The whole game is Monika's idea, and the group seems fiercely loyal and doting on anything Monika wants. With that, they drop her with a parachute back down to Towa City as they prepare the game from within their flying airship, and Monika notes to herself the anticipation for the despair to come. After a rough rooftop landing, Komaru still isn't mentally ready to deal with the death game, and as the Monokumas bear down on her, she is saved by a scissor-wielding girl who easily slices them apart. Calling her Dekamaru, she notes the hacking gun Komaru has is from Byakuya, but she suddenly switches to a completely different personality. Now calling her Umaru, the girl then takes out a taser, applies it to herself, and switches again to the fervent psycho who easily handles the nearby Monokuma mob. Switching back to the timid form, she introduces herself as Toko, and her violent split personality is Genocide Jack. Komaru recognizes the name as the same as a famous serial killer, and though Toko confirms she is the same, she also affirms she's learned to control that side of herself and only change when needed. Toko is fiercely loyal, if not delusionally obsessed, with Byakuya, and shares that Byakuya has been captured. Now she moves to take Toko and rescue Byakuya, and they move on. As they work down the building, they meet another Monokuma kid, and Toko explains that while the kids are all working together with the Monokumas to kill all the adults, it wouldn't be right to just attack them. Later, it comes out that she's not an official Future Foundation agent, only an intern, until she can prove she can control Genocide Jack and not kill another human being. They're about to part ways, with Toko moving to rescue Byakuya, but Komaru asks her to help her escape the city, not confident she can survive alone. Toko agrees, and Komaru is grateful, and Toko reveals she still needs to work on her plan to rescue Byakuya anyway. Unfortunately, neither of them are from this town and so don't know their way around to escape, but since it's an island, they think to look for a bridge. Spotting a large one and heading for it, they learn to start working together while being surprised to find new variations of the Monokuma dolls. Reaching the bridge to the mainland, Toko has an ominous feeling, but they are suddenly stopped by a boy and learn he is also captured by the Warriors of Hope as part of their death game, as evident by his wristband. He introduces himself as Yuta Asahina, and Toko recognizes the name and face as the younger brother to Aoi, whom also survived the Hope Speak Academy. They soon discover the bridge has been destroyed, but Yuta doesn't give up. He says that while he's better at track and field, he's a really good swimmer, though not as good as his sister, and so leaps into the water. He blazes across the water, but as he approaches the city limit, he notices his bracelet flash only briefly before it explodes, killing him instantly to the horror of Komaru. After the grief of losing Yuta, Toko convinces Komaru not to give up hope, as she just remembered there's also a subway system they could try, though she doesn't look forward to telling Aoi about Yuta's demise. Looking for the subway and encountering more dangerous enemies, they find the subway entrance instead leads to an arena filled with Monokuma kids and headed by Masaru. He shows them the mounds of dead adults that have tried escaping to the subway too, and Komaru tries to reason with him, explaining one day they'll all turn into adults too. Masaru proclaims he'd rather die as a kid then, as his confidence slips and he recalls the past in which he was physically abused by a drunk parent. Snapping back, he grabs a remote and calls for a giant robot to defeat them, and with teamwork, Komaru and Toko defeat the robot. Surprisingly, after his defeat, the crowd of Monokuma kids all unanimously grab Masaru and pull him down into an unknown fate, as Toko thinks punishment for losing the game. While Komaru is relieved to have survived the trap, Toko kicks herself for missing the chance to get any valuable info on the leaders of the Monokumas and kids. As they try a different path through the city, they're unaware of a unique new bear looking down at them. Meanwhile, Monika and the others weep at the loss of Masaru, but Nagisa points out nobody says Masaru is actually dead. Recovering quickly, Monika is shown to be even more manipulative of the children as she declares Nagisa the new leader and leaves them in the dark about her whereabouts. Finding another subway terminal, the girls try to find a way out as they work past new challenges and dodge a collapsing tunnel. Along the way, Komaru learns Toko changes to Jack and vice versa whenever she loses consciousness or sneezes. They're suddenly met by children with a monitor and a message from Jotaro. He introduces himself and explains that the wristbands will explode if they leave the city. To rattle them further, he shows them the adults he killed, of which he turned into puppets on strings and nailed in place for one of the many dioramas he likes to create. His tone references a history of being hated and despised on in the past, and he's learned to revel in the hate. Moving on, they rescue what they think is a person that turns out to be another bear named Shirokuma that has an AI making it unique among the other Monokumas. Claiming it wants to be friends, Shirokuma tells them of a secret base nearby full of adults in hiding. They agree to follow Shirokuma there, though Toko still has her guard up, and it turns out they are led to a base full of adults in a resistance. They find another woman there here with a wristband by the name Hiroko Hagakure, and again, Toko recognizes her as the mother to Yasuhiro, another survivor from Hope's Peak. Afterwards, Shirokuma talks more about the Warriors of Hope, explaining the elementary school they came from isn't technically affiliated with Hope's Peak Academy, but it's true that it's a prestigious school that many Academy students still came from. It also studied the talent of children, and only child prodigies could attend. The Warriors were all part of a class set aside for troublemakers, and as children were pretty impressionable to have their talents turned to evil, and thus kill without guilt or mercy. Children in their innocence are quite cruel, and the fact that these had more talent than adults make them all the more dangerous. At this time, the leader of the resistance comes in, introducing himself as Haiji Towa, indeed part of the Towa family. Toko asks a few questions, but Haiji is still new to the situation as he's been elsewhere. His father, who was here and would have had the answers, has been missing since the riots started. However, he stops being cooperative once he learns Toko is from Future Foundation, angrily telling them to leave. When Shirokuma learns of this, it gives him a special laptop made by the Togami group that Future Foundation usually uses for communication. Unfortunately, there is a digital jammer blocking all calls in Towa City, but if they ascend above the jammer, they might be able to contact Future Foundation, one such place being the namesake Towa Tower. Being decisive this time, Komaru decides to take the opportunity, but as they approach, Jotaro is actually there with a trap ready to capture the girls. They defeat the ambush, and Toko wonders if Shirokuma set them up, though Komaru defends it. Ascending the tower while encountering more new threats, they encounter a man with a wristband who might be able to bypass the security on the elevator. Though, as soon as he unlocks the tower for them, he is immediately torn apart by a new Monokuma type, and as they find a picture on his body, Toko recognizes him as a father to Hope's Peak victim, Chihiro Fujisaki. As the elevator is forced to a stop, the floor they're on turns out to be another arena this time, and they face down Jotaro. Toko wonders why he hides his face, and Jotaro flusters, admitting that ever since he was born, his face has been the source of hatred adults have directed at him, having been forced to wear this ugly mask to hide his uglier face. As he unveils his own giant robot to fight them, he also reveals Junko was the one that rallied them and gave them hope to start their own revolution. The girls succeed in defeating the robot, and as Jotaro is punished, the mob tears off his mask to reveal a surprisingly angelic face, but he's still pummeled anyway. Returning to the elevator, they head to the top of the tower, and as they set up the laptop, they succeed in getting a call through the jamming. By sheer luck appropriate for his talent, it's none other than Makoto who receives the call and is surprised to see his sister again. As they reunite, Makoto shares he unfortunately doesn't know where their parents are either, and catches Komaru up on most of what happened since she was kidnapped, including the events of the first game and joining Future Foundation. He also reveals all of the captives like her were all relevant people to the classmates of Hope's Peak to be used as hostages to incite murder and more, though that plot was fortunately ended early. It wasn't until recently Future Foundation received a tip that the Killing Game captives were in that specific apartment and sent Byakuya's rescue. The girls then inform him of the massacre game going on in Towa City now, and the direct mention of Junko earlier. It also unfortunately comes out that Byakuya is being kept hostage precisely so Future Foundation doesn't interfere, so Makoto can't send help now. Toko even warns Makoto not to try to send Future Foundation to save Komaru, as if Byakuya were killed for it, she would not hesitate to kill Komaru. Suddenly, the call is cut off and a blackout hits the building, forcing the girls to leave for now. Meanwhile, as the Warriors of Hope easily success the loss of Jotaro, Kotoko has a breakdown when Monika casually says the word gentle, flashing back to her child actress days in which she was sexually abused by the adults around her. Nagito now comes in, reporting he successfully stopped the girls' communications and has an idea on how to use them to find the Resistance adults too. At this time, we're introduced to a unique new bear, Kurokuma, who is all black with a gangster-like demeanor and brutal mindset. Back with the girls, they leave Towa Tower with some new friction given the last call. Komaru opts to split up and go back to the Resistance bunker, and despite her objections, Toko follows her, citing she has her own reasons for doing so. Once they return, Shirokuma welcomes them and tells them Haiji is discussing with the others the next move of the Resistance. They happen to learn that the survivors here don't have any small children, and that's likely not a coincidence, as the Monokuma kids were all incited to murder their own parents first. Toko chastises them for their lack of action or planning, and Komaru takes their side, claiming Toko doesn't understand what it's like to be weak or mundane. Toko counters, saying she's never been the strength in any group, but even then she did something about her circumstances, something she learned during the Killing Game, and never just repeated her weakness as an excuse for inaction. Their bickering is interrupted by a surprise attack by Monokumas, and in their surprise the Resistance adults are slaughtered wholesale. Shirokuma begs the girls to fight for a little bit and buy any survivors time to escape, and they both agree. They succeed in destroying the invading force of Monokumas, but at a steep cost of victims. Haiji is furious, blaming them for being followed back here since they likely were found out while contacting Future Foundation. He orders them detained, and as the girls are separated in their respective cells, Komaru is shocked to see Kotoko, the Warriors of Hope, at her cell door. She admits she was originally here to hunt her, but decided instead to let her escape. Reason being, she loves things she considers adorable, and that includes Komaru, so Komaru is free to go. However, once she turns her back, she's knocked out by Kotoko's denture-launching weapon. As Komaru sleeps, Kotoko mentions how her dad was a dentist who cheated on her mom with his assistant and also neglected his practice, forcing her to also make more money. Meanwhile, Toko sneezes in her dusty cell, allowing Genocide Jack to come out, who is more interested in breaking out and finding Byakuya. Jack easily breaks out and looks to snag Komaru, but sees she's gone, and a few Monokuma kids have their things to track her. Jack doesn't look the gift horse in the mouth and isn't afraid of Chap, so she snags their items and chases after Komaru. Meanwhile, Komaru wakes up to find herself strapped to a strange machine when Kotoko activates a group of grabby hands to motivate Komaru into obedience through aggressive massaging. Jack zeroes in on Komaru's location, which is on a train, and is an unstoppable slasher as she breaks into Kotoko's room and easily deals with a little girl. The train suddenly derails and Jack frees Komaru, who's grateful for the rescue and apologizes for their earlier fight. Jack sneezes, reverting to Toko again, and as they get their bearings back, they find themselves in another arena, this time facing down Kotoko once more. Kotoko explains she's disappointed Komaru won't accept being adorable, even if it means being an object of jealous resentment. She reveals that she only wanted to be average, but her mother lived vicariously through her, even prostituting herself and Kotoko to get acting deals. She doesn't believe there are any good adults, since none helped her escape from the trauma of being raped. They now face her giant robot and win against it, though as the Monokuma kids are about to lynch her too, Jack jumps in to save Kotoko. Toko now questions her where Byakuya is, but Nagisa now shows up, justifying their need for a kid's paradise. He reveals adults were the ones who broke all of them and made them fearful, so they have to die in order for there to be peace. Komaru sympathizes a little bit with them, but counters that an eye for an eye makes everyone blind. Nagisa then admits the two girls have so far ruined their revolution, and if escape is all they want, then he'll let them go, so long as they really do leave and stop interfering. Meanwhile, Monika finishes a spell circle with a picture of Junko in the middle, ready to create a second-generation Junko Enoshima. Also, Nagito is secretly spying on Nagisa as he entreats Komaru to leave. Nagisa even shows his sincerity by taking off Komaru's explosive bracelet and agreeing to show her the secret passageway out of town, despite knowing how much this would anger Monika. As they move towards the escape route, they are suddenly surrounded by camouflage Monokumas, and Nagisa is surprised to see them encroaching to attack him. The girls save him, saying his betrayal must have been found out, but Nagisa insists his heart is in the right place. As they pass another mortifying pile of victims, they ask Nagisa if he really feels nothing, and he repeats he and the others are actually afraid of adults. He resented being put in the class for troublemakers, as if he and the other warriors of hope were the cause of trouble. For him, his parents placed an inhumane academic burden on him, even resorting to drugs to keep him studying around the clock. His father, who was a teacher at Hope Peak Elementary, was also a researcher of children's talent, and placed enormous pressure on Nagisa there too, in order to study the breaking point of overdeveloping a child. He still considers it lighter suffering than the other warriors of Hope, mentioning that Monika's legs were broken by her jealous family. In their bonds of pain, the warriors of Hope agreed to finally escape their pain with suicide. Right when they were about to leap from the roof of the elementary school though, Junko approached them and convinced them to fight back, abducting them and creating the dream of a children's paradise for them. Learning to use their hate as motivation, they learned to kill adults and break the existing belief system, eventually killing their own parents. They gained a lot of momentum, freeing other children and inducting them into their belief, but then Junko was killed. When that happened, Monika took charge of the warriors, inspiring them as Junko did and supplying them with the Monokumas. As Nagisa shows her the way out, Nagito shows up, here to persuade Komaru to stay, as without her the game cannot see its proper end. He also calls out Nagisa, saying he knows the reason he went behind everyone's back to do this was because he knows Monika would prioritize this game over building his dream of a paradise. He then reveals that he's disappointed in Toko, saying he made a deal with her to bring Komaru to the children's base in exchange for releasing Byakuya. In fact, their meeting on the roof wasn't a coincidence but a planned event thanks to Nagito, as was returning her hacking gun to her and the games and gifts the Monokuma kids would periodically give her. He claims her entire path so far was a game to help her grow along a certain path, and the reason of which is mainly Makoto's fault. Because he defeated Junko the Ultimate Despair, whom he claims to hate, he became a symbol as the Ultimate Hope. Since Komaru is an unremarkable weak girl by comparison, if she overcame this despairing death game, she could also become a symbol of hope, arguably stronger than Makoto since he was already an Ultimate. His game would have her defeat the final boss and become the hope for this town, so he can't have her be leaving and use Toko as insurance. As Toko verifies how she's tricked Komaru, she says she'll keep her here by force, turning into Jack and attacking Komaru. Komaru fends her off by using the hacking gun on Toko's taser against her, rendering her unconscious and surprising Nagito. When Toko comes to, she urges Komaru to take her chance to escape, and Komaru realizes Toko attacked and lost on purpose, to convince Komaru to really leave because she cares. Nagito is disappointed in Toko and forces her to change again, and once she does, she instead slashes Nagito's legs. She explains that while she doesn't share memories with her other half, she shares emotions, which currently tell her to kill Nagito and let Komaru escape. Luckily for Nagito, Komaru holds back Jack, saying she's her friend, and Jack/Toko made a promise to Byakuya that Jack wouldn't kill another person in order to become a true Future Foundation agent. For her sake, Komaru agrees to stay behind, so that way Byakuya isn't in danger, and Jack won't kill Nagito in order to save Byakuya. Jack is moved by Komaro's sincerity and thanks her for being a friend, and as she turns back to Toko, Toko is also grateful and to actually have a friend for the first time in her life. Asking Nagito how to free Byakuya, he says they must beat the final boss and save the princess, but this plan wasn't his alone, for he has a partner, though he doesn't know exactly what they're planning. He doesn't tell them who it is either, and says he's been disqualified from the game, though he'll still support them. Komaro says she'll do it, though not really for this town, but definitely to help her friend Toko. Nagito does tell them the children's headquarters is Towa Hills, but the front door approach would be suicidal, so Komaro thinks to ask Shirokuma and Haiji for help. After they leave, Nagisa returns, mad and with his own robot. He takes Nagito back to get a confession of betrayal out of him, but Nagito just chuckles. Monika now comes in, explaining she was the one working with Nagito to bring Komaro back to her, and breaks Nagisa's spirit by revealing she never actually cared about their dream of building a paradise for kids to live in peace. Instead, she's more concerned about making a successor to Junko and Mishima. To confuse and exasperate Nagisa even more, she kisses him, and scared he tries slapping her away, but Monika persists in crushing his hopes and imposing her will unto him. Back with the girls, they're about to return to the Resistance hideout when they hear screams and find them under attack again. They do their best to quell this wave, and afterwards, Shirokuma says they need to block the hole the Monokumas are coming in from. It suggests using explosives in its own body to collapse the hole, and reluctantly, Komaro agrees to fire at Shirokuma and destroy it. The ensuing explosion succeeds in closing the hole, and afterwards, Haiji isn't pleased to see them, but is willing to admit they aren't spies. Komaro insists now is the time to act before it's too late and convinces the group to fight. Haiji is swayed, revealing he has a trump card, and one of the adults finds Shirokuma's head, still intact and talking somehow. Haiji then leads them to his trump card, allowing them to use his motorcycle to get there in a hurry and down a secret shaft to Towa's secret factory. The factory is overrun by Monokumas and tough for security, and they notice this factory is actively producing Monokumas. When Haiji unveils his trump card, they are shocked to see it's a giant king Monokuma called Big Bang Monokuma, and confront him on Towa's continuing Monokuma manufacturing. He explains the Monokumas were originally meant to be made robots for serving and doing dangerous tasks, though the big one was made to protect the whole city in case of danger. They are interrupted as Nagisa crashes in, though he's clearly insane compared to his normally calm demeanor. They manage to outfight his sharpshooting robot, and a large part of it collapses back onto him, crushing him like everyone's expectations had crushed his spirit before, though they think Nagisa may have still survived that. Haiji says him and his father are the only ones able to control the giant Monokuma, so he insists on driving them out this time. Meanwhile, Monika continues her plans, as her pawns all did their duty as she proceeds in her plan to create the successor to Junko and Ashima. Outside, the Monokuma kids indeed flee for Big Bang Monokuma as it easily shreds through the army of killer Monokumas in its path. Nagito approaches Monika to announce his departure and drops that a new intruder has entered Towa City. Monika doesn't care and is instead glad that, despite how they look, things are actually going per her secret plan that she never even told Nagito about. He reminds them all that growing the despair to this level so it can be burned by hope in the end is really the world he seeks, so to prove again that hope always wins. With that, the two say their farewells and part ways. Haiji rallies the rest of the adults, publicly thanks Komaro and Toko, and prepares for their final attack. Hiroko comes in with Shirokuma, and they all agree that adults counterattacking the children in this mob state likely means there will be adults killing children and vice versa, and no one will really win in this case. Shirokuma points out the killer Monokumas are not autonomous like it is, and are given orders by a device somewhere. The device is likely at Towa Hills, so if they get there before the battle gets out of hand, they can destroy the device, and thus the kids won't have an army anymore. Toko is reluctant to go out of their way to be a hero, but Komaro points out Byakuya will be in Towa Hills too, so they were heading there anyway. Big Bang Monokuma leads the counteroffensive, which is gaining momentum and pushing back their children, as Komaro and Toko head inside the office building. Within, they learn the kids who wear the Monokuma heads are actually brainwashed and placed under mind control, and Komaro rationalizes they are just victims in this too. Toko points out it's awfully suspicious Komaro's new confidence and mindset is strangely parallel to where and how Nagito earlier said he wanted her to be, so to be careful. Soon, Haiji catches up to them, explaining the sheer number of Monokumas was too much for even Big Bang Monokuma, and so had to drop down and search for their master control device. Toko finds it awfully suspicious that this too was Shirokuma's advice, and by design, they must find the chairman, Haiji's dad, who's actually dead in the nearby office, and Komaro must be the one to move his severed head to the retinal scanner. As she reluctantly does so, she hears the ghostly voice of the chairman, who reveals Monika is his unwanted bastard daughter and Haiji's stepsister, and they must stop her. As they move in, they save Kotoko from peril, and she reveals Monika betrayed them and their dream of paradise, even likely having the Monokuma kids ambush them after a loss. She also reveals the device to control the Monokumas is in Monika's hands aboard the Excalibur, their airship currently docked on the roof. Finally, she tells them where Byakuya is locked up, but only Monika has the key on her to free him. They later find a torture chamber, and Haiji explains this is where they broadcast the torture and execution of the resistant members' relatives in order to flush them out, and Toko finds it awfully suspicious that somehow the kids knew exactly who to find and torture within the resistance. Later, they find the throne room empty, and beyond and up a ladder, a room with pictures of Junko plastered everywhere that they conclude must be Monika's room, despite how it's elevated. As they ascend the scaffolding to the airship, they are now introduced to Kurokuma for the first time, and he doesn't get in their way as he lets them by to Monika's room. When they approach the door to her room, they are shocked to see her spring out of it on her own and be standing like normal. Somehow, Komaru suspected Monika wasn't really paralyzed, since her room before was up a ladder with no disabled access. This begs the question why Monika fakes her disability, and she answers it's simply easier to manipulate people that way. By pretending to be a pitiful child, she would gain sympathy from everyone, and it worked like a charm. She not only confirms she is from the Towa family, but also that she never cared about the Children's Paradise plan, and that Komaru in particular is essential for the successor plan. She pulls out a controller and explains she was the CEO of the robotics branch of Towa Group, and used this to control the Monokumas and Monokuma kids. She won't get it over so easily either, and reveals her own superior robot, comprised of the weapons of the previous Warriors of Hope, and has herself and Kurokuma pilot it, while broadcasting this fight to everyone. Edging out a win, the ensuing explosion destroys the body of Kurokuma, and sends his head flying elsewhere, much to the cheer of the adults outside. Defeated, she hands over the controller, and with it in hand, Komaru is about to break the controller, ending the Monokumas, the kids' brainwashing, and the uprising. But for Komaru, it seems awfully suspicious how easily the controller came to them and how eager and quiet Monika is during all of this. Komaru starts second-guessing the choice to break the controller, and now Kotoko comes in with her objections, and Haiji comes in to add his scorn of Monika and reveal the whole city is watching. He also forces Monika to reveal the truth of things, such as her wanting to trick the Warriors of Hope into suicide without joining them, and Junko wanting to take advantage of Monika's position in Towa to mass-produce Monokumas. To hide this, she lied about the nature and purpose of the Monokumas to her brother and father, and was the war machine behind Junko, turning the incident at Hope's Peak into the worldwide tragedy. At this time, her father realized too late what was going on, and Monika blackmailed him into a new project for making anti-Monokuma weapons to sell, lest their involvement be made public. So, making the Monokumas and the weapons to fight them, Towa Group made a lot more money, thus why the tragedy got larger and didn't really hit them as hard as they were playing both sides. Eventually, even her father started getting into the despair, and became Junko's patron, but gave up as soon as she was killed. That was when Monika decided to start her own uprising, causing a new war to throw the world back into despair and becoming the successor to Junko. In fact, she says destroying the controller will start a new war, and Kotoko chimes in to say this is true, since she found out that if the controller is destroyed, then the Monokuma heads the kids are all wearing will explode. Monika confirms this, saying the choice is now whether to destroy the controller, kill the kids and be the savior of the town, or don't destroy the controller and let the kids slaughter the adults. One side will die, and she pushes Komaru to choose which one. With this, she explains her intent all along to turn Komaru into the successor to Junko, as it would be ultimate irony to have the little sister of the ultimate hope become the new ultimate despair. To give her some final motivation for revenge, she now shows Komaru her parents dead by hanging. This pushes Komaru off the deep end, and in her despairing rage, she chooses to smash the controller. In a split second, Toko scrambles to knock the controller away and cling to it, saying she's doing it to save Komaru. However, Monika already accounted for this, producing the lone key that can unlock Byakuya's door, thus forcing her to choose between saving Byakuya or Komaru. Faced with her own choice, Toko chooses to save both and demands the key as well. Suddenly, Big Bang Monokuma crashes in on its own, which should be impossible, surprising even Monika. It splits up the standoff and takes aim at Monika, who is suddenly delighted to now feel true despair herself as the room collapses on her. Escaping to the balcony, Toko slaps some sense into Komaru, and Komaru calms down, resolving now to instead find a way to save both the adults and children in this city. Now, Big Bang Monokuma finds them, targeting the girls specifically, though both girls are ready to fight back and combine their skills as they discover a new hope for themselves and destroy the colossal weapon. To their surprise, Shirakuma's head was within the giant, and as they turn back, they see Monika has survived, though debris has crushed her legs, paralyzing her for real this time. Komaru chooses to spare Monika, opting instead to get the key to Byakuya's room. They all leave Monika, denying her an ending of hope or despair, as her airship comes crashing down and Komaru says she'll stay in this town and save both sides. As Monika comes to, she's being carried away by Nagito, who explains he's also disappointed by this ending, with no war resulting for a shining hope to emerge from. He says now he'll raise her to be more like Junko than Junko herself. Elsewhere, the heads Sakurakuma and Shirakuma chat, explaining how Monika's plan to create a successor never would have worked since the original was still around, though they're pleased with how much meddling they both caused. As the facade drops between the Black Hope and White Despair, it turns out both are the AI Junko and Oshima, just displaying the separate aspects of her personalities. As they say the real showdown is getting ready to begin, they bid a brief farewell as their heads are crushed by the onlooker to the whole thing, Izuru Kamakura, who takes the AI chips out of each as he proceeds to move to the next stage of the plan. Elsewhere, Byakuya makes contact with Makoto to give a sit-rep, explaining that after he was rescued, he and Yasuhiro's mom helped out the other captives escape the city. He relays that Kamaru chose to stay behind in exchange for Byakuya, so that Future Foundation will not interfere with Towa City before she resolves it. Toko elected to stay behind with her friend too, and she's relieved to share that the video Monika showed of their dead parents was fake. As they sign off, Byakuya says he'll help out to repay the debt he has to Toko and Kamaru, and as the game ends, the girls set out into Towa City to keep the peace, as hope begins to brighten the new day. Danganronpa Another Episode, Ultra Despair Girls, has enjoyed the success of selling over 250,000 copies worldwide. Thanks for watching. If you like this and want to see more, go ahead and check out the other Danganronpa videos, and then after that, subscribe and leave a suggestion down below suggesting the next thing that you want to see recapped. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next battlefield.